Hello everybody, I am the Worm. Welcome back to Raging Loop. It is now time that we are about to begin the next main route of this game. Potentially the last main route of this game, I don't actually know. If we check our album here, maybe it's not. I see two more big squares. And then two smaller rectangles. So who knows? It could be... I mean, going by this, it would seem to indicate that maybe we're halfway done, which would be pretty crazy, actually. I really feel like we're kind of 2/3 of the way done. First was just our introduction to the whole world and the whole game and all that stuff. Second was actually mastering the game, playing the game, and now third would be, learning the secrets behind the game. That would make sense to me. But who knows how this will go, but, we'll just have to play it and see how it goes. My volume's kind of loud, there we go. Okay. Now, is there anything I want to say before beginning this? Last time, near the end of last episode, I kind of went over our remaining mysteries, so I don't think I need to rehash that. We mastered the game, and as I just said, we're gonna have to learn the secrets behind it. I know. I think it was. Who was it? Yeah. So I know Unknown Pitfall has been saying, both in the last episode and a couple episodes before, basically imagine, because we're thinking the rules are going to get changed again, right? Because we're going to try and get Yudai Hashimoto in this game. I'm pretty sure that's what we're going to be doing next. So that means we're going to have our full cast. And because of that, I'm pretty sure that means we're gonna get different roles for people. So the thing that Unknown Pitfall said, and the thing that I'm very afraid of, is, imagine the worst case scenario where there are three wolves and it's Chiemi, Rikako, and Fusaishi, Haruaki. That would be awful. I scarcely want to contemplate what that would mean. On the one hand, it would terrify me, but on the other hand, that would be a very quick and easy way to learn what goes on with wolves, because we would become one. I don't know if that's going to happen, because I do feel like that would be too easy, if Haruaki became a wolf. We'd just get the answer, because one of the questions we're waiting for is what's the deal with becoming a wolf, because we know it's not just the story. And then of course Rikako becoming a wolf is awful too, because we just had that whole, if the first route was Chami's route, the second route was Rikako's route, and she's this sympathetic character who was kind of the MVP of last round, and we've kind of formed a connection with her. Haruaki has formed a connection with her, and so if she were to become a wolf this time around, the man's already been broken. Haruaki had to witness her death and see his whole world fall apart. I don't even want to think about what it would mean if now suddenly in this next game he's up against her, But who knows? Maybe that's exactly what the author would want to do, really twist the knife in there just to make it all the worse. But we'll find out. Let's get there. Now I did notice something. We have to go back to infiltration. I did notice. I just looked at the this flow chart before starting. There is this isn't the one we have to do, but there are a couple keys that would give us choices to make before the one we are actually going to make. So we're going to here decide arrangements. But there's this choice here, and I think there's actually, because I was looking at it earlier, and I wasn't sure which one we had to do. I think in here too. Let me just see it real quick, if I can find it. Yes, here as well. So both before and after our so this is the decision that's going to make us go to a new main route. And yet there's a choice before it and after it that presumably we're not going to get the key until into this next main route, which I find interesting. So I guess what is that saying? We're moving on to a new main route, but we may not be done with this route here because there's apparently more stuff we have to deal with. I just thought that was interesting. So let's go back and get this started.
興味深いわね。思いっきり神道的な発想だけど、どういう由来で伝わったのかしら。
Haven't seen you in a while, sir. Now he has a kind of natural poker face, you know. He doesn't seem to put his emotions on his face very much, so I'm actually a bit concerned, you know. I feel like he'd actually be good at this game we're about to play.
変化した鳥居、お守りをいただく名家、霧の時に限定されたみそぎの風習。マロードの艦隊はしないみたいだけど。
Oh, before moving on, there was also a bit of a discussion in the comments, talking about, remember at the very end of the credits we saw Lei Jing, Lu Bu. We were kind of talking about what that might mean, and let me see if I could find this actually. Yeah, so Serial seemed to think that Lu Bu means wolf, and well, we weren't too sure about Lei Jing, but I think it's interesting that and I think it's funny I didn't realize it at the time. Lei Jing just kind of, you know, it rhymes with raging. So, and it's similar, I had forgotten, but apparently at the end of the first main route there was another credits, and it also said Raging Loop, but L-O-U-P, so Raging Wolf. So the game's Raging Loop, then after the end of the first credits it's Raging Loop, but Loop meaning wolf, and now it's Lei Jing Lu Bu, which is apparently, I guess, also something involving the wolf. So weird kind of changes in the title, I guess. So I'll be curious to see what it is at the end of this route too.
不思議だわ。こんな偏僻な農村になぜこんな得意な風習が残ったのかしら。昔はもっと特殊な集落だったとか？
やっぱりそっちのが向いてそうだね。キューちゃんの本職。
あった、これは失礼。じゃあスミカも霧が立った時の対処も聞いたし、お仕事に戻りましょうか。
キューちゃんが寮の部屋でいいよね。それで僕がここ。
あ、よかったら下の小屋は橋本さん使われませんか？こっちは手狭ですし。
大丈夫大丈夫。どこでも寝られるから。それに君はこれから住むんだろ？早いところ家に馴染んだ方がいい。
He had a point. Also, I'd borrowed the place from Uematsu-san. I didn't have the right to let just anyone use it. Here we go. Okay, so this has to be that final key we got, right? Yeah. So I don't know if this is going to be a Haruaki who... I think we've seen there are times where his memories from say the previous attempt comes back to him. Maybe does it always come back at just the very beginning? Well, hang on, let's see. Let's just see. My question might get answered right here. This was it. If I let Hashimoto-san take the prefab, his death would be unavoidable. By keeping him alive, I should be able to create a different timeline. Okay, so it's not like he was just in the middle of this and then the memories came back. Presumably he went back to the beginning again, did everything as normal, and is now acting upon that knowledge to do this. Yeah. Simply surviving wasn't enough. That meant I had to try all possible options. I had to reveal all the things I was ignorant or afraid of. For all I knew, I might have been overlooking some minor yet important details. I think it's interesting how, this is Haruaki post the ending. He seems to have recovered. He was pretty broken by the end there. So maybe all the looping experience, all his looping experience has allowed him to recover more quickly. But first, I wanted to try more impactful changes. Letting Hashimoto-san survive would have to greatly affect the timeline. That already happened once with Nami-san's survival. It even changed the guardians people received. I could still remember the last loop. I'd become the snake, took out the wolves, and decided to live alongside the survivors, most importantly, Rikako-san. Those sentiments had earned an unreasonably cruel conclusion. I could still remember the sadness and despair, but I couldn't really understand it. Why had I forgotten my fear of the unknown? Why had it been so easy for me to decide to move to Yasumizu and live alongside Rikako Uematsu-san? Was I that kind of person? I didn't know why, but it definitely seemed like I wasn't really myself back then. I'd felt like I'd become a part of something greater, not just an individual. The gears all snapped into place and brought forth that tragic ending. These feelings and guesses coming to my head left me without a clue as to where to go from here. Part of me did feel like fate or something divine existed and that I couldn't escape its control no matter what. But my knowledge, discretion, perception, and intuition wanted to deny that line of thinking. There was no absolute fate. If there was something like that, it was either someone's elaborate plot or just a product of my imagination that seemed like it. I wasn't being a conspiracy theorist here, or a nihilist, for that matter. However, I wanted to reject the lines of thinking that stifled my ability to come up with ideas. If I could think creatively, I might be able to find gaps in these seemingly impenetrable bars jailing me here.
細石君、どうかした？
気にしないでください。僕は今後ずっとあそこに住むんですから、橋本さんはこの一晩だけでも楽に過ごすべきです。
しかし、
藤吉村にはマロードを丁重にもてなす文化があるそうですから、その一員となる僕もそうすべきだと思うんです。
まれびと信仰？確かにロケーション的にはしっくりくるけど、ここの現状を見るとピンとこないな。それってあの樋口さんから聞いたの？
Ah, crap. That was info Rikako-san had given me last loop.
まあよくしてもらいましたよ。こうして家まで手配してくれて。
Yeah, I feel like if I was a looper, I'd be a very bad looper, you know? like getting timelines messed up and revealing information you shouldn't know. Of course, technically, you'd have infinity to learn it, and maybe eventually I'd get good at it.
久石君、人がいいのね。
え
Nope, not at all.
ご好意はいただいたらどうです、橋本さん。
じゃあ、いただこうかな。
All good. After parting ways with them, I went to Kaori-san and had her help me get a shabby blanket, some newspapers, and a water bucket. There was only one bucket they could let me use, and it was in a pretty bad state, showing once again just how dire Yasumizu's supply problem was. The newspapers weren't daily news, but some old ones brought from Kamafujiyoshi as material supplies. I spread them out on the floor and placed the blanket on them. That was my sleeping spot ready. I'd also bought a portable toilet at the convenience store. Now, if nature called during the night, I wouldn't be faced with the difficult choice to either die or piss myself. After finishing up the preparations, I, just like last time, returned to the dining hall. I was given some shishinare again, and somehow ate it all.
あら、平気そうね。お口にあったかしら。
Nice to see you again, Kaori, in a living state.
案外いけますね。
That was a bit of a lie. I just came prepared for it because of my experience from last time. I still wasn't used to it enough to declare it good. Just what kind of booze would go with this? Then, like last time, I went on to fix plates. Last time, I learned the symbols of the Gucci, the Uematsu, and when I'd gotten the snake, the Miguruma symbol, even if it wasn't too clear. The Nasato mansion had theirs on the gate, so now I knew them all. This info could possibly lead me to the truth, so I had to remember it. I think did I take pictures of those? I have to scroll up pretty far. No, I only have the Higuchi. Come on, game, you should at least show me them again. Doesn't Rikako have the symbol on her somewhere? I don't know. Sometime passed, and like last time, the students came back.
ただいま。あれ
Nice hat. The bright yet tender Yasunaga Oribe. His tenderness was mostly toward his family, though. It was a very human trait, which is a good thing. I felt bad for him for getting caught up in something like this. Whether he was an ally or enemy in the feast would greatly affect how it went. I didn't want him as an opponent, that much was certain.
見知らぬやつ。
The free-spirited and slightly amoral Chikamochi Kamoshida. He had left quite an impression on me. As a wolf, he was a threatening individual who could do some horrible things with a straight face. But what would he be like this time? And then there was her, Haru Makashima. Last time she'd been brutally murdered, while the time before that she sided with the wolves as the badger. She wasn't much of a contributor to the feast. I considered her to be a troublemaker rather than anything else. But
そうか。落ちてきたか。己、幾度かやり直しておるな。
はるちゃんは夜中寂しがって一人で抜け出したんだ。お泊まり学校。それで山道を抜けて。わからない。大人は安水の手前で見つけたって言ってたけど、みんな安水で何か見たんじゃないかって噂して。そのせいかわかんないけど、それでしばらくはるちゃんおかしくなっちゃって、みんな狼付きとか噂して。
She was the closest person to the mysteries surrounding Yasumizu. She'd lost her parents to the previous feast, disappeared once, then started talking strangely.
偉大なる神を下ろすのは相応の儀礼にのっとるべきで、簡単に勝手に取りつかれるようなものではないと。
The village heads insisted that this wasn't any sort of possession, but a mental illness. However, the fact it was treated using Uematsu's special ability to take in such things made it seem entirely possible that the trouble surrounding her was of divine origin. But there was something I didn't really understand. I didn't know how, but last time Rikako-san healed me of aconite poisoning. I knew it with my own body that this ability was more than just a religious rite, and had an actual physical effect. That didn't necessarily mean that it would work on mental illnesses too. Honestly, there were too many things that didn't make sense here.
その汚れは私にも引き取れない。
This is the symbol I was thinking of, by the way. Yeah. I didn't know the rules. It kind of freaked me out, but for now, I had no choice but to set Rikako-san's issues aside. What mattered now was Haru-chan. She had parental issues, a strange relationship with her granddad. All in all, she was a delicate young girl, going through a complicated time in her life, and I didn't quite know how to deal with her. Fooling around with her didn't work, and Casanova-type characters seemed to scare her. I tried to not do much and appear harmless. Maybe that would work.
おかえりあなたたち。こちら急遽休みずに移り住むことになった夫妻さんよ。
どうも。
I bowed with an empty expression on my face.
兄ちゃん、アンドロイドだ。
I had to do my best not to fall over at that.
え、なんで？
だってなんか人間じゃないみたい。
I don't know if you can win this fight, Haruaki.
おお、ハルちゃんが僕より失礼だ。
すみません。こないだ見た SF 映画にハマったみたいで。
一応人間です。
どうも、牧島春です。
She wasn't as wary of me as last time, at least. I still had no idea how to approach her.
どっかで会いました？
いえ、この辺りに来たの初めてですから。
ですよね。
Did she have memories of my seducing? No, of the previous loop?
なんだこれ。香織さん、ごめんなさい。ちょっと手拭いかなんかもらえます？
Something similar had happened last time, too. It wasn't impossible that someone else had memories of the previous times. Particularly this girl, considering her mind held traces of madness.
何？
Crap. I stared at her for too long. I had to talk it off.
いえ、僕も何か引っかかるものが。関東に出たことは？
ないです。
そうか。じゃあきっと何か縁があったんでしょ
う。どうしたの？真っ赤だよ。
いや、そんなことないよ。ほー。
Huh? Was she easier than I expected? Maybe android-like coolness was the way to go with her. Whatever that was.
織部さん、こちら補修が完了した食器類、いかがいたしましょうか？
Cool manner of speech, robotic movements, playing with people's impressions was a bad habit I had.
じゃあこっちへ。 さっきそんな喋り方だったかしら。
了承、実行。どうもありがとう、メッサーシュミット。
Messer Schmidt.
暗い必殺人間バナナ。
Ooh. Mochi closed in on me, shouted some weird skill name, instantly undid my belt, and brought my pants down.
すっげえパンツだ。
こら、近持くん。やっていいことと悪いことがあるでしょ。
いや、今を除いて仕掛けるときはなかったろう。
Well, if you looked at this as a joke, this was definitely well timed. My android-like coolness, whatever that was, instantly became a gag. His skill left me so dumbfounded that I just froze in place, with my pants down, effectively giving a treat for the ladies and waiting for a response. How did the girl see this pantsless android-like cool guy before her? And again, what was android-like coolness anyway? There it is.
変態変態変態変態変態変態変態変態変態変態。
Not a positive reaction, of course not. Mochi's prank effectively gave her the worst possible impression of me. Haru-chan had kicked my exposed ass over and over. The two boys stopped her, and then she, breathing heavily, fled the dining hall. The guys followed soon after, leaving just me and Kaori-san.
僕は悪いでしょうか。
後で全員叱っておくわね。
She was all red ever since then. It was awkward as hell. I distracted myself by getting back to fixing plates. Eventually, we were joined by old wolf guy Meiko and Rokako-san. I wasn't quite done with my job yet, but just like last time, I was given a break, so I went outside.
嵐を見と毛が生えり。あ、不妻子さん、お疲れ様です。
Getting close to Rokako-san was important for both survival and finding out the truth. I still had some affection for her, as well as memories of our time together. However, last time, when I'd felt a similar way about Chiemi, I was hit with a big surprise. It wasn't just Chiemi, though. The Feast of the Yomi Purge seemed to bring out a total change in the nature of people. If Rokako-san became a wolf this time, I wasn't sure if she would instantly kill herself like she claimed she would. In fact, as a wolf, she would know Meiko's guardian or lack thereof, leaving the humans at a huge disadvantage. And most of all, if I got too close to her, it would make parting with her a whole lot harder. Even if I lost some of them, I had memories of the previous loops. So, this was actually a big deal for me. The emotional strain would gradually pile up, and eventually, even a guy as warped as me would snap. Thus, I would only get close to people as friends. That was probably the best way to go about this. I had no idea who'd even be alive once all this was over. It was even possible that there'd be no one left.
我らを生かすこの山。
神内山の化身、神内明神様の教えを歌った古い歌です。神内山のお守りはひかがちふましらみからすよくも。
She was teaching me the song. I actually knew it by heart at this point, and the memories it was tied to made it hard to listen to, but I acted like it was nothing.
あやしよみびとなきにせん。
It took an uneasy tone. I looked away and saw Chemi snickering as she waited for the right time to pop out.
くくれやひとひにひいとり切り立った。
あ、お疲れ様です。
あれ？
Heh. She knew exactly what she was doing with his sudden appearance. How mischievous.
狩りでもしてきたんですか？
ああ、惜しい。肝臓じいちゃんの獲物の解体の手伝いをちょっとですね。
なるほど。似合ってますね。
何ですかそれ。なんか傷つく。
Crap. I accidentally remembered what she was like back then and gave a sarcastic comment. If she'd been telling the truth back then, she'd wanted to kill me ever since we first met. That meant that even now she was... Hold on. Did that mean all that stuff I jokingly said about her being a murderer were on the mark? We did talk about this. I think it's been a few episodes now. I think I said I'd eventually go back to check this, the other options. I'm not sure when I'll get around to doing that, but maybe at some point I'll start by doing that. But yeah, I do remember we talked about this again. After all, the two shotguns were hidden in her room even then. They were. That's definitely, certainly a piece of evidence right there. Hold on. The first time we met, our very first encounter was among the rocks near Saranaga. I picked up her flashlight, then she called out to me. What was she even doing there? Thank you, Haruaki. I remember having this question ages ago. It was late at night, yet she'd taken a flashlight and gone down a dangerous cliff to reach an area locally taboo, Saranaga. She'd also said this.
ちえみさんはね、ただ単に最初から殺したくて殺したくて殺したくて殺したくて殺したくて殺したくてたまんなかっただけ。そう、言ったら里帰りしたのだって殺しがしたくて戻ってきたようなもんだったしさ。
Those might have been nothing but words to make herself seem like the big bad wolf she was. However, it wasn't unlikely she'd come down to Saranaga because she was doing something worrying. She'd probably been there on this timeline too. We just hadn't met there. Maybe this time, she'd actually finished whatever she was doing there. Well, no one had gone missing or anything, so it probably wasn't murder, at least. It still made me curious. I was definitely attracted to her cheer, tact, and mystery. But this time, I would focus on exposing the secrets of Yasumizu itself. He who hunts two hares catches neither. I would only consider her to be a potential hazard.
いやいや、ワイルドさがハンティングなイメージに合ってるってことですよ。ちへみちゃんは猫科の猛獣って感じ。
お、いいですね、ちえみちゃん呼び。ついでに肉食獣に味見されてみます？なんとカレッジな。私もリカ子とお呼びください。なんだそれ。
僕も下の名前でどうぞ。
What a mess of an exchange. Though it still served to decide what we'd call each other, so that was fine by me.
何イチャイチャしてんのよ、パンツマン。
Suddenly, we were joined by Haru-chan holding a stick.
死んでー。
Okay, this is a turn. I was actually getting chased by a girl because of lewd stuff. What was this? A 20th century manga.
パンツマン？パンツマン。パンツマン。
I was worried that nickname would spread, and I really hoped it didn't. I couldn't have predicted that I'd run out of time just calming Haru-chan down and preventing the nickname from taking roots in their mind.
夕霧が。
Wow.
嘘。いや霧は嫌。
Was she afraid of the mist because of whatever happened 8 years ago?
はるちゃん、落ち着いて。ちえみちゃん、彼女はどこに？
In the spur of the moment, I went and called her by her first name, which I was pretty sure she didn't like, but no one could care right now.
私が寮に連れてく。春明さんはどこに？
ああ、そうだ。今日は僕は上のプレハブに泊まることにしてまして。
どうしてあんなところに？小屋はどうされました？
僕は明日からずっと寝泊まりするから、お客さんにいい場所を譲るべきかなと。
春明様、素晴らしいお気遣いかと。何ごちゃごちゃやってるの？急いで。リカ子さんはメイコちゃんのこと頼みましたよ。わかりました。メイコ、みそぎ、物意味、夢枕よ。ねえ、わかった。春明さん、抜け道教えるから上まで一緒に行こう。春ちゃん、歩ける？霧。いや、息が追ってくるの。爪の音が。
I looked at Chiemi, she nodded, and I picked Haru-chan up.
さん。いや。
She was pale, her expression was empty, and her body was shaking, locked in a fetal position. Just what had she seen in the mist? What had she gone through? I hesitantly tightened my grip on her. She meekly grabbed onto my jacket. I had no idea if I could get along with her, but it wasn't impossible. While on the move, I had noticed Hashimoto-san head to the hut I provided him, so all seemed good on that front. After leaving Haru-chan in her dorm room, I said goodbye to her, Chiemi, and the two guys there, who were waiting for Haru-chan in worry, before making my way to the construction site.
寮の裏手の小道通ればすぐ行けるから、足は滑らさないよう気をつけてね。
She'd also told me about how to prepare for the feast and was generally pretty nice about it too. It was pretty annoying that I couldn't just tell her that I knew it all. By the time I'd arrived in the prefab, the sun was down. I began by checking how I'd fare here. I'd take only the bare minimum of food and water I had here. I came prepared, but I didn't want to have to use the bathroom until morning. This was the shabbiest sleeping spot yet, but since I was still pretty awake, that allowed me to think a bit more. Okay. Let's assess the situation, and then I think we'll be done. It was time to assess the situation. First of all, there were two things I had to keep in mind. How Yudai Hashimoto-san joining would affect the feast. And we're gonna... I think I'd talk about it last time. Lise wrote up a pretty good comment talking about how we really should be paying attention who as to, you know, obviously we're going to be looking to find out what everyone's role is, but in particular we should look up on what changes and what stays the same. So I think one example would be Misato has always been a human, I think. Yeah, so that's just one example. I think I'll go into it in more detail next time, but yes, because that would give us, especially now that we're on the third route, that could give us hints as to the methodology of who gets chosen for what. So we'll see how this works. And whether I could find out much about the feast and Fujiyoshi from Haru Makishima. The former would probably be made obvious by tomorrow. If he'd died, despite all I'd done this time, I'd be out of all ways to help him survive. I'd have to start considering if there was something inhuman at work that was actively trying to prevent him from joining. If he did join the feast, though, the guardian assignments would definitely change, just as they had when Mamiya-san and I joined. That would be neither good nor bad. However, the info I'd gained the first time, when I couldn't participate at all, and the second time when I participated in the snake, were completely different. Naturally, there was a change in human relationships and who benefited from them, and now, with this change, I would get to know people I hadn't interacted much with yet. Especially Haru-chan. I could only hope that being the undie man didn't result in her avoiding me. That reminded me. Mochi was the reason for my new title. Was he the biggest obstacle in my path toward the truth? Nah. He wouldn't admit it, but the guy liked Haru-chan and was jealous that I was getting between them. Oh. So he was the one who killed Haru-chan last time. Was the sad face I saw on him the day after just an act? I had no idea, but I could totally imagine him killing her, only to regret it later. Oh yeah. Yasunaga-kun also revealed his feelings for Chiemi right before she killed him, didn't he? She'd instantly shot him down, though. It seemed like she had felt the same way the first loop, so that was probably true. Or maybe I just wanted to think that way. Then again, being liked by Chiemi meant that she wanted to kill you, so I wasn't sure if I was happy about that. That aside, as a wolf and as a human, he was a player skilled at debate and consideration. His words were rarely far from the mark, and he had influence over his mother's and friends' votes. He wasn't self-righteous or some kind of loner, and with a pretty good backer spurring him on, he could be an excellent human player. If he was a wolf, though, I'd instantly know from his lack of enthusiasm toward the feast. Maybe that would be considered cheating, but whatever. Meanwhile, though, Chiemi had done some bold things during the last feast. She wasn't a very active participant in the meetings themselves. That was probably because, just like Mochi, she played cautiously as a wolf and avoided drawing attention to herself. taking that into account, Shemi's whole hang me act on the first day was pretty impressive. Yeah, I was thinking about that. It was bold for a wolf to make such a self-sacrificing play at that stage, but it was at a point where people weren't yet ready to hang anyone, human or wolf. She'd managed to make herself look like a human without any real risk, and kept the act going until the end. I'd heard that Shemi had a decently big impact on the feast I didn't participate in. If she became a human, she would surely be a valuable asset to humans. Personally, I didn't want to be enemies with her again, but I had no idea what she thought of me right now, before the feast even began. She herself had told me that she'd always wanted to kill me, which meant that the kindness she displayed to me so far could have been an act. That wasn't a pleasant thought. Rokako-san, too, seemed pretty fond of me. That was probably because of her idea that I was a special person who could do something about the feast. I wanted to do something about it too, but saw no possible way at this point. I couldn't help but worry that I'd disappoint her again. She was pretty passive in the feast, and her votes often prioritized the local folklore and fairness. She did some pretty dangerous things, though, like trusting me without any real reason to. However, as a descendant of the Uematsu family, she knew full well just how scary the feast was and how to deal with it. The fact that she knew Mako's position was pretty important too, and would surely be important now. I wasn't sure about Mako herself, though. We need to be on the lookout for if Mako, she would say like her head hurts or her arm hurts or her leg first. I may have to go back and check what the specific messages are, because if we see Mako make a message, we could tell what she's saying. Although, wasn't not making a message in and of itself, so we have to be careful, I think. If she got a guardian and Rokako handled her well, they'd all be good. But if that wasn't the case, I couldn't expect much from her in the feast. And her votes would be based on how she felt at the moment. She would be an uncertain factor and nothing more. Rokako-san let her vote as she pleased, probably to hide that they were communicating, which wasn't great. The old man who cried wolf was even worse, though. What the hell was that guy? A senile old man? It really didn't seem like it. Kanzo-san had said he'd survived the previous feast. He'd never said anything important during the feast, but had a vote worth the same as everyone else's. He'd also pretended to be the spider last time. Though Rokako-san came out as the spider as Mako's representative, she was essentially the real thing, claiming to be the spider despite that was only meaningful if you were the badger. After all, if the badger presented themselves to the wolves once enough the humans were out of the game, they would have a latent ally, which would be pretty good for them. And if he was capable of thinking that much, it meant that he wasn't just senile, quite the opposite, in fact. But that idea didn't click with the fact that he'd always ended up getting hanged. What was he even after? I had more than enough evidence to conclude he was insane, but that just made spending time thinking about him all much more of the pain. Now, while Kanzo-san's actions and goals were obvious, he was hard to control. He'd been handling the feast based on his experience from the other ones. It was a relatively logical approach, but he wasn't flexible at all. He was extremely overbearing when it came to the flow of the conversation, and didn't mind making unnecessary sacrifices, which eventually led to a lack of stability. He also had a weak point in Haru-chan. When it concerned her, he could become dangerous and violent. The other elder, Tai Yamawaki-san, was simply a hyper-traditionalist who resented the younger folks. In certain situations, it was easy to get her to vote right, but in others, she was nothing but a hindrance. She was also Takumi-san's, a key person's, weak point, and handling that whole matter was difficult. Tai-san's opposite was Yoshitsugu Oribe. He didn't care about tradition and hated the elders, as well as the village heads. He also had an intense type and could easily mess up the feast. It was also possible for him to make peace with his mother and brother and enter the Yasunaga faction. But if left to his own devices, he could break the rules and get eliminated from the game on the first night. Handling him was difficult. His mother, Kaori-san, was generally a passive player who followed Yasunaga-kun, but she had a tendency to do unexpected things. When Yoshitsugu-kun died, she tried to poison everyone's food, and she tried to bend the feast's rules and leave a dying message. She was the sole source of decent food here, and honestly, I wanted her and her sons to survive until the end. Then there was the man who understood and loved her, Takumi-san. He was important as a facilitator and mediator, keeping Yasumizu unified despite the tribulations of the feast. He had a lot of weaknesses, though, such as his antagonism toward outsiders and the village heads, as well as his tendency to do unnecessary stuff on his own. However, all of that was outweighed by his popularity, charisma, and sheer strength, which were useful every now and then. Overall, he was someone I wanted to depend on. He really had to form a trusting relationship with his brain, though. Now, Kinosuke no Satoshi was pretty hard to evaluate. He often said things that didn't have to be said, couldn't read the mood, and tended to create conflicts between himself and Yasumizu's people, but despite expectations, he ended up surviving. He actually wasn't wrong most of the time, but his presentation alone often ruined it completely. He was one of the few village heads in the group, so I could at least count on him to prevent any unfair votes towards Rokako-san. But besides that, I just remember that he was a doctor. Couldn't he examine the dead bodies? Why did I have to do it when we had him around? He hadn't insisted on examining a single corpse so far. Was it because he was afraid of dead bodies or something? What the hell? That kind of joke wasn't funny in a situation like this. Besides them, there were the journos. Mamiya-san had pretty much been manipulated by Chemi, so reading her was hard. If she could keep her cool, she could probably make some decent contributions to the feast. Also, I felt that her knowledge of folklore and occult stuff would be necessary for my current main goal, finding out the truth. As for Hashimoto-san, he hadn't survived this night even once thus far, so I couldn't say anything about him. However, though the first impressions had made him seem like nothing but a fat guy, he did show an impressive capacity for logic and reason. If Mamiya-san and Hashimoto-san survived, I imagine they would perform really well in the feast. Of course, it was hard for them to pass the barrier all outsiders faced here. Then there was myself. I was the most suspicious here and the one most likely to get hanged. Last time, I'd been able to survive because I was the snake and leveraged my role well. It helped me get Takumi-san and Rokako-san over to my side, as bad as that sounded. However, there was no guarantee that would happen again. It was best to assume it wouldn't. In that situation, I'd focus on helping my side emerge victorious with myself still active, rather than just helping my side emerge. I'd have focus on helping my side emerge victorious with myself still alive, rather than just helping my side emerge victorious. Okay. He wants to say alive. I get it. Sorry. Even if I could loop, there was no guarantee that I couldn't get into a situation where I would be hanged no matter what. That was a heavy thought to have, but I'd have to believe I could make it and keep pushing onwards. I had to keep going. Suddenly, I felt drowsiness come over me. Had I been so busy during the day that I'd ended up more tired than I thought? It was time to cleanse myself. I took off my clothes, wiped my body, switched into my spare underwear, and that was that. Then I locked the shabby-looking lock, returned to my bed, if you could call it that. What would I do if my door was suddenly knocked down and some scary werewolf monster came in? I'd tried to keep myself on my toes, but my brain knew that wasn't how the feast worked, so it just relaxed and led me to sleep. I'd be safe today. I wouldn't die today. I'd think about what came next, later. Okay, we're gonna end it there. Let's call it. Okay, that was a lot. I kind of blitzed through that final summation there. Ooh. Always keep some water nearby. I felt like I was so focused on just reading that I'm not sure I fully digested the substance of what was being said there. Okay, well, we'll deal with that. Next time, I think I'll sum up the summation, just for myself more than anyone else, and maybe expand a bit on what we were talking about with keeping track of people's roles. In any case, yeah. I'm guessing... Do you think this is the Haru route? I don't know. Obviously, that would be a different kind of route from Chami and Rokako, since there wouldn't be a kind of romance angle there, but yeah, I guess we'll just have to see. Alright, I've been the Worm. This has been Raging Loop. New route, new excitement, new horrifying things as well. So, see you next time.